My name is Claire Anderson, and I'm 32 years old. The man who was supposed to be my father's lawyer had just finished his hollow speech, and the last shovels of cold, wet Detroit dirt were hitting the polished wood of my father's casket. I stood there, my hand gripping a black umbrella, so tightly my knuckles were white, watching them bury him in the Anderson family plot. Everyone was murmuring their condolences, stepping carefully on the wet grass, their faces a mix of pity and morbid curiosity, but the one face that should have been there, the one I needed to see, was nowhere in sight. My mother, Evelyn. She hadn't even called. She'd sent a text message an hour before the service. A text. It read, "Claire, finalizing the Miami expansion. This is critical. You'll have to manage the interment. We'll speak soon. No, I love you. No, I'm heartbroken. Just manage the interment." And then I knew who it was. We was Julian Croft, the slick, polished consultant she'd brought into our family business, Anderson Heritage Interiors, a year ago. The man she'd been parading around as her business partner. The man my father, Bob, had despised. As the small crowd of relatives thinned out under that oppressive gray rain, my phone stayed silent. I drove back to my downtown loft, the one overlooking the skeleton of the old auto plants, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I felt hollowed out, empty. That's when I made the mistake of opening social media. And there she was. My mother. Evelyn. Her arm was wrapped around Julian's waist on a sun-drenched beach in Miami. They were clinking champagne glasses, grinning at the camera. The caption, posted just an hour ago, while I was watching my father's coffin be lowered into the ground. Screamed. To new horizons and shedding old weight. Shedding old weight. Bile rose in my throat. While I was burying my dad, she was toasting her new beginning. The grief I felt began to curdle, twisting into something else. Something sharper. Angrier. The hours dragged. The storm outside battered my windows, a miserable soundtrack to the worst day of my life. Midnight came and went, and then, at 1:17 a.m. my phone buzzed. I glanced at it. An unknown number. But as I looked closer, my blood ran cold. I knew that number. It was my father's cell phone. The one I had memorized since I was a little girl. The phone that was supposed to be turned off, buried in a box of his personal effects. I opened the message. 4 words. I'm alive. Come to the cemetery. Now. My heart didn't just slam. It stopped. Then it exploded, pounding against my ribs so hard I thought I'd be sick. This had to be a joke. A sick, twisted, horrible prank. Who would do this? Julian, my mother. But what if it wasn't? I grabbed my keys. I didn't change out of my black funeral clothes. I bolted down the stairs and out into the downpour. My windshield wipers were useless against the sheets of rain. I sped through the empty, slick streets, back to those imposing iron gates. The cemetery was pitch black, the fog swallowing the gravestones, turning them into ghostly shapes. This was insane. What if it was a trap? What if it was some sick game? I parked, the tires sliding in the mud. I stepped out, my flashlight app cutting a weak beam through the darkness. I walked toward the Anderson family plot, my feet sinking into the soggy earth. "Dad," I whispered, my voice trembling. And that's when I saw it. A shadow, moving behind the ancient oak tree near my grandfather's headstone. A voice cut through the thunder, a voice I thought I would never hear again. "Claire, kiddo, is that you?" The shadow lunged toward me, and I screamed. He grabbed me, his arms wrapping around me tight, his coat soaked through. "It's me, kiddo, it's me. Keep it down." He pulled me deeper into the shadows, away from the road. His grip felt real. I could feel his heartbeat, or maybe it was mine, pounding against my chest. This was not a ghost. This was not a trick. I froze, then hugged him back, my voice cracking. "Dad, how?"
We buried you.
"I saw." "You saw a box, Claire?" he whispered, his eyes darting toward the gates. "We can't talk here. We have to go. Now." We stumbled through the mud to his old, beat-up sedan, a car I hadn't seen in years. He'd hidden it behind the caretaker's shed. The engine coughed to life, and we peeled out onto the empty streets, my mind racing back to that morning. The call that had shattered everything. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal from someone you love, or if this story is already grabbing you, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really does help. And if you want to hear what happens next, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss the rest of this story. I'd been at my loft, sipping coffee and working on a new marketing pitch for Anderson Heritage Interiors. Our family firm, started by my grandfather, specialized in restoring historic landmarks. It was my legacy as much as his. My phone rang. An unknown number. Miss Claire Anderson. A nurse's voice trembled. This is Detroit General. Your father, Robert Anderson, collapsed at his office. It was a sudden cardiac event. They're working on him, but miss, it's critical. You need to come now. The words hit me like a freight train. Dad, my dad. He was the steady one, the bedrock of our family and our business. Gone. Just like that, I dropped my mug. It shattered, scattering ceramic shards across my floor. I didn't even stop to clean it. I sped to the hospital, laying on the horn, weaving through traffic. By the time I arrived, a doctor pulled me aside in that sterile, fluorescent hallway. He didn't make it. He said flatly, no emotion in his voice. He handed me a clipboard. We'll need you to sign these forms for the estate and the release. No details, just forms. My knees buckled. I had just seen Dad last week. We'd argued about a supplier invoice. He looked tired, yes. His face was lined from years of grinding it out in this town, trying to keep a legacy business alive. But he wasn't sick. I called my mother right there, my tears blurring the phone screen. Evelyn picked up on the third ring, her voice cool and distant, like she was in a board meeting. Claire, what is it? I choked out the words. Mom, it's Dad. He's gone. A heart attack at the office. There was a pause. Not a gasp, not a sob, a cold, calculating pause. I see, she said. Her voice was perfectly level. Claire, this is a terrible time. The Miami deal is in escrow. It's very delicate. Just sign whatever the hospital needs. I'll handle the corporate transition from here. The line clicked dead. Corporate transition. Not, or family, not, or grief. The afternoon was a blur. The funeral home. The hurried arrangements. And then the burial, at that old urban cemetery, the rain turning the ground to sludge. My relatives huddled under umbrellas, whispering. Where is Evelyn? My aunt muttered to my uncle. A wife skips her own husband's burial. It's a disgrace. Heard she's off with that Julian Croft, my uncle whispered back. The one who's been sniffing around the company. Bob hated him. I'd knelt by the fresh grave after everyone left, the mud soaking through my black dress. Dad. I whispered to the dirt. Mum's acting so strange. It's like she's relieved. The wind howled through the rusted gates, and I felt this gnawing doubt. Dad's last health check was clean. No heart issues. Stress, yes. The fights with Mom about the business had been bad. But a sudden, fatal heart attack. Now. Dad snapped me back to the present. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel of his old sedan, as we merged onto the highway, skirting the decay of the city. Evelyn has been after my shares for months, he said, his voice low and gravelly, a voice I'd never heard from him before. She and that snake Julian, pushing me to sign over my controlling interest in Anderson Heritage to them. He's not just her partner, Claire, he said, glancing at me. He's her lover. He's been feeding her lies about expanding offshore, about how my old-fashioned way of doing business was holding them back. They forged emails. They threatened to cut me out completely. I gripped the door handle, the pieces clicking into place. The collapse, Dad. Was it real? He nodded grimly. Oh, it was real, the stress. It finally got to me. We were in a late meeting, just me, her, and Julian. They presented a new plan. A plan to dissolve the Detroit Heritage Division, our entire company, and liquidate the assets to fund their new Miami Shell Corporation. I told them no, he said, his jaw tightening. I told them I'd see them in court. And that's when the pain hit. Like a vice in my chest. I collapsed. Right there on the conference room floor. The ambulance rushed me to Detroit General. But Claire, she got there first. She showed up with Julian, and she had lawyers with her. I was hooked up to monitors, still struggling to breathe, and she shoved documents in my face. His voice hardened. Sign it, Bob, she said. Or the firm is finished. Sign it while you can still hold a pen. You refused, I whispered, picturing the scene. Damn right I refused, he spat. That's when her real plan kicked in. He swerved, taking a side street, his eyes checking the rearview mirror. One of her guys, I think, followed us from the cemetery. See that black SUV 2 cars back? My pulse spiked. The headlights bobbed in the mirror, closing the gap. Dad, speed up! He floored it, the old engine roaring in protest. We tore through Detroit's abandoned warehouse district, tires screeching around potholes. The black SUV fell back, lost in the maze of derelict buildings. We pulled into a dark, crumbling building, its rusted metal door groaning open just enough for the car to squeeze through. He killed the engine, grabbed a duffel bag from the trunk, and we bolted inside. The heavy door slammed shut behind us, the lock clicking with a terrible finality. The air was damp, thick with the smell of mildew and old machine oil. This place, I knew this place. This is grandfather's original workshop, I whispered. Off the grid, Dad said, flipping on a single, bare bulb that cast long, terrifying shadows. No cameras, no traces. Evelyn thinks this place was bulldozed years ago. She won't find us here. We sank onto worn wooden crates, catching our breath. He pulled a battered laptop from the duffel bag. It started with the emails, he began, the screen glowing. He opened a file. Months ago. She and Julian started faking threads, making it look like I agreed to transfer my shares. We're talking about millions in assets, Claire. The company your grandfather built from nothing. They started siphoning funds, hiring shady accountants to backdate deals. Julian set up shell companies in the Caymans. They were inflating invoices for restoration supplies we never ordered, then funneling the cash to his accounts. I leaned in, the dim light highlighting the exhaustion etched on his face. Why, Dad? The firm was split evenly. Why go to all this trouble? Because Julian convinced her I was holding her back, he said, rubbing his temples. He filled her head with new money dreams. Miami condos. Yachts. He's not just her lover. He's her ticket out of the Rust Belt, as she calls it. When I confronted her with the proof, she just laughed in my face. His voice dropped as he described that night again. When I collapsed, I woke up in the ER. Evelyn burst in, not with worry, but with that stack of papers. When I refused to sign, she stormed out. She told the doctors I was confused, that I'd had a stroke, not a heart issue. She was trying to get me declared incompetent. So how did you? Mark, he said. Dr. Mark Hassan. A Mark Hassan. Dad's college roommate. The chief of staff at Detroit General. Mark saw what was happening, Dad continued. He'd seen me a few weeks prior for a checkup. He knew I was under stress, but he also knew my heart was fine. He saw Evelyn and her lawyers. He saw the new doctor she had brought in, a specialist on her payroll. Mark knew she was trying to get rid of me. Permanently. After she stormed out, Mark slipped into my room. Bob, he said, I know what she's doing. They're not going to let you leave this hospital alive, or they'll have you committed. We have to get you out, and Mark risked everything, Claire. He switched my charts. He declared me deceased. Sudden, massive coronary. Unsurvivable. But the funeral, the casket. Mark manages the morgue, Dad said quietly. They had an unclaimed John Doe who'd been there for weeks. Same height, same build. Mark arranged for a closed casket service. He said you'd insist on it, that Evelyn wouldn't. He was right. While Evelyn was in Miami, he wheeled me out the back exit in a laundry cart. He drove me here himself. The weight of it all sank in. Our family empire, twisted into a trap. My mother had tried to murder my father, or at least let him die, to steal his legacy. Right then, my phone vibrated on the crate, the screen lighting up the gloom. It was a new text, from Evelyn. Claire, I know you're grieving. But the estate must be settled. Come to the house tomorrow at 10 a.m. There are papers you, as his heir, must sign. Don't be late. I looked at my dad. The anger on his face was replaced by a cold calculation I'd never seen before. Go, he said. Play along. Be the grieving daughter. But Claire, you get me proof. Get me proof of what she's done. I slipped out of the safe house while Dad slept fitfully, his warnings echoing in my head. Play along. Gather proof. I drove to the house. Not our family home, the one I grew up in. This was the new, glass and steel monstrosity Evelyn had built in Bloomfield Hills, a gleaming white elephant that mocked our crumbling family ties. I parked my modest sedan behind Julian's cherry red Ferrari. I straightened my black jacket, took a deep breath and hit record on my phone's voice memo app before ringing the bell. My mother opened the door herself. Her makeup was flawless. She was wearing a crisp white designer blouse. No black, no mourning. Selena, she cooed, using my old childhood name, her voice dripping with practiced sympathy. You look drained, sweetie. Come in. Let's get this over with quickly. She ushered me into the study, a room my father had despised. It was all chrome and black leather. She slid a thick folder across the polished glass desk. As Robert's sole heir, she said, you just need to sign these transfers. It consolidates the firm's assets under my control. It's what he wanted, to streamline things for the expansion. Her tone was all business, like she was closing a deal. I opened the folder. Share assignments. Proper linkages. Millions and millions of dollars. My eyes went to the signature line. Robert Anderson. My blood ran cold again. I'd seen my father's signature on contracts my whole life. His steady, confident hand. This wasn't it. My fingers trembled as I traced the forgery. The loops were too tight. The pressure was uneven. It was a good fake, maybe even digitally scanned, but it was wrong. Mom, I said, my voice shaking. This isn't Dad's writing. This signature. It's forged. Evelyn paused, mid-sip of her coffee. Her eyes narrowed over the rim of the cup. She set the mug down deliberately. A small chuckle escaped her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. He signed it in the hospital, Claire. His hand was shaking. He was hazy. Don't complicate things with your grief. Just endorse the transfer, and we can all move on. Her gaze locked on mine. A warning. The firm's future is at stake. Don't make this messy. I saw the calculation in her eyes. Years of her, the ambitious bookkeeper who'd married the boss's son. Resenting the Anderson name. Resenting my father's careful, steady approach. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping the rug. I know what you did, I whispered. You and Julian. You pressured him. You tried to force him out. My phone was recording, right in my jacket pocket. Evelyn's smile vanished. Her face became a tight, hard mask. You need to be careful, Claire. You have no idea what you're talking about. Sign the papers. Or you'll find yourself facing a team of lawyers who will tie you and your father's precious legacy up in court until you have nothing left. I backed toward the door. As I did, my eyes caught something. Behind a tacky, oversized modern art painting on the wall, I saw the glint of a keypad. A wall safe. My heart was racing. I turned the knob, but she rose from her desk. We're not done here, Claire. I slipped out into the hall just as the study door clicked shut behind me. I didn't run until I was out the front door. I sped to a greasy spoon diner on the city's frayed edge. My cousin Leo was already there. He's my uncle's son, a 24-year-old IT wizard who'd freelanced for the firm's security systems. He's loyal to the Anderson name, not to Evelyn. I slid into the booth, my hand still shaking. Leo, Mom's faking documents. She's got a safe in her office. We have to get in. Tonight. Before she locks everything down. We huddled over lukewarm coffee. His fingers flew across his laptop. Okay, he said, pulling up blueprints of her new high-rise office building. I can bypass the lobby cameras remotely, spoof the feeds with looped footage. But you have to get in. Your old intern key card should still work on the service entrance. The safe, I said. It's a keypad. Probably something personal, he mused. A birthday. An anniversary. Adrenaline sharpened my focus. Dad's flash drive. He told me he had a flash drive with the real financials on it. He must have hidden it in that safe. He thought she'd never find it. Leo's plan clicked. He'd park in a van nearby, jamming any silent alarms. In and out, Claire. 10 minutes, max. Night fell like a shroud. We approached the gleaming office tower. The air smelled like glass and stale money. I used my faded keycard from my intern days. The service door clicked open. Cameras are looped. Leo's voice crackled in my earpiece. You're clear. Go. The hallways were dark, the distant hum of the building's HVAC system the only sound. My flashlight beam danced over the cold, sterile walls. I reached Evelyn's corner office. The door was locked. I used the key from her desk at the house, the one I'd swiped when she wasn't looking. The safe loomed behind the painting. I punched in Dad's birthday. Error. I punched in their anniversary. Error. Claire, you've got 2 minutes, Leo hissed. I paused. I thought about my mother. Her narcissism. Her ambition. I punched in her birthday. Click. The safe door swung open. Inside, it wasn't just a flash drive. It was 2 sets of books. The real ledgers and the fake ones. And a small, black flash drive. Got it, I whispered, plugging it into my laptop. Files spilled open. Offshore accounts. The Cayman shell companies. Inflated invoices. And emails. Chains and chains of emails between her and Julian, detailing their entire plan to bankrupt the Detroit division and siphon $12 million in assets. Copying now, I whispered. The progress bar crept across the screen. 50%, 70%. Claire, we've got a problem. Leo's voice was tight. Someone just triggered a manual alarm from a remote IP. She knows. Get out! Get out now! 80%, 90% copy complete. I ripped the drive out and bolted. I flew down the stairs, bursting into the alley. Ditch the laptop, Leo yelled from the van. Just bring the drive. My phone screamed, Evelyn. I yanked Leo into the alley behind a dumpster. I answered, putting it on speaker. Claire, she hissed. Her voice wasn't cooing now, it was steel. Return whatever you just took from my office. You have no idea who you're messing with. You are playing a game you cannot win. Bring it back, or you will regret this. Permanently. The threat hung in the damp air. Click. The line went dead. She's on to us, Leo whispered, his face pale. But the data's secure. I circled back to the safe house under cover of night. Dawn was breaking as I handed the original drive to my dad. Dr. Hassan arrived moments later, his medical bag swapped for a secure laptop. FBI anonymous drop, he said, booting up encrypted software. Whistleblower portal. Untraceable. We watched as the files uploaded, the offshore ledgers, the fake invoices, the emails, and my recording from the house. It's sent, Dr. Hassan said. The feds have it all now. Your testimony will seal it, Bob. My dad paced the dim, dusty workshop. She'll spin it. She'll say I was unstable. We wait. The tension was unbearable. Every creak of the old building made us jump. 48 hours crawled by. We watched the local news on a small battery-powered TV. There she was, Evelyn, poised, in a tasteful black dress, giving an interview outside the mansion. I am, of course, mourning my husband deeply, she told the reporter, her eyes perfectly dry. Anderson Heritage Interiors will honor his legacy by pushing forward, by expanding, just as he always wanted. Clips looped of her and Julian at press conferences, announcing new partnerships. They're not even waiting, I seethed. Then, late that night, headlights swept across the safe house. Tires crunched on the gravel outside. Pounding fists rattled the metal door. Claire! Open this door! I know you're in there, and I know he's in there! Evelyn's voice boomed, laced with fury. Julian's silhouette stood beside her. Someone had tipped them off. Dad stepped from the shadows, his hand on my shoulder. I'll handle this. He cracked the door, the chain still latched. Evelyn. His voice cut through the night. Evelyn shoved forward, her face twisting in pure, unadulterated shock. Bob, you're impossible. And at that exact second, sirens wailed, growing louder. Red and blue lights flooded the warehouse. FBI, hands in the air! Do it now! Federal badges flashed. Agents swarmed the doorway, weapons drawn. Evelyn and Julian froze. Cuffs snapped onto their wrists. Evelyn twisted, her eyes wild, locking on my father. You're dead, she screamed over the sirens. You're dead. My dad met her glare, his face calm. You wanted the company, Evelyn. But you couldn't just wait. You had to try and steal it. You just couldn't help yourself. Here's the proof, Dr. Hassan said, stepping forward, handing the lead agent a folder with the altered medical records and his full confession. He was a victim of coercion. We faked his death to save his life. They seized the flash drive from the table. This isn't over, Claire. Evelyn shrieked as they hauled her toward a car. This isn't over. Our family lawyer, Arthur Jennings, arrived at dawn. My dad detailed everything. The coercion. The threats. The hospital. Arthur coordinated with the prosecutors building the federal case. The offshore trails, the hospital logs, the forged signatures. It was airtight. The media exploded. Dekrobai tu icid ddidiskites kendiel. Nidus pilotatio stelempi. The trial was 3 months later. The courtroom was packed. Dad took the stand first, his voice steady. He detailed the pressure, the threats, the night he collapsed. Dr. Hassan followed, explaining how he'd risked his career to save his friend from a wife who was, in his medical opinion, a malignant narcissist, capable of anything. Then Arthur Jennings rose and the projector lit up. Exhibit A. The flash drive. The 2 sets of books. The 12 million in siphoned funds. The emails. And then, the final nail. Julian Croft. Seeing the mountain of evidence, he had flipped. He took the stand against Evelyn for a reduced sentence. He told the jury everything. How she planned it. How she saw my father's collapse not as a tragedy, but as an opportunity. The verdict was swift. Julian got 10 years. Evelyn, the mastermind, was found guilty on all counts. Fraud, coercion, and conspiracy. The judge sentenced her to 30 years in a federal prison. She didn't even look at us as they dragged her away. Dad and I cut ties. No visits. No letters. The company, its reputation shattered, was dissolved. We auctioned off the assets. My dad, finally free, took his share and moved to a small town in Florida. He actually did retire. I took my share and I built my own marketing studio from scratch on the edge of Detroit. I work with honest clients, people building real things, not paper empires. The betrayal left a permanent scar, but the law, in the end, was unyielding. The lesson I learned, watching my mother be led away in handcuffs, was that greed doesn't just corrupt, it blinds. It makes you believe that the people you love are just obstacles in your way. My grandfather's legacy wasn't Anderson Heritage Interiors. It wasn't the money or the buildings. His legacy was the integrity he built it with. A lesson my mother never understood. And a lesson I will never forget. Thank you for listening to my story. Have you ever had to face a terrible truth about someone you trusted? Have you ever seen greed tear a family apart? I would love to hear your own experiences and wisdom in the comments section below. Sometimes, sharing our stories is the only way to heal. And if this story resonated with you, please click that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real life stories just like this one. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss what happens next.